Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Backline. I'm your host Darren Colson, and I'm joined as always by your co-host AP Cronier. AP, how you doing, my man?
Yeah, so well, thanks, Darren. How are you getting on?
I'm good. I'm good. I haven't been the best this last week, and I've been under the weather, as they say, with laryngitis, but I'm recovering well, and I'm super excited to jump back on another episode with you. And talking of the weather, it's a gorgeous day, so I don't know why we're stuck inside, but we have a lot of rugby to talk, and yeah, how's things that side then?
Yeah, no, also all right. I mean, yeah, it's been about 2 weeks since we last spoke, and yeah, as with everything, the unpredictability of the UK, and just as you touched upon the weather, I mean, 1 week ago, 22 degrees. Today, this morning was snowing outside where I am in London. So crazy, it's all over the show. But yeah, let's get stuck into the rugby because we do have quite a lot to get through this week.
We do, and I mean, let's sort of round up the past week and the current weekend. Then I thought we'd start with a couple of signings that I've seen. Hanno Dirksen, who plays for the Ospreys, is going over to America, and he joins Nola Gold. He's had a pretty good season with the Ospreys. He's scored 40 tries and over 150 appearances, and he's no joke. He's joining a really decent on form Nola team. They've got the likes of Carl Meyer, JP Duplessis, Damian Stevens, and they're looking like one of the favorites for the tournament. Do you know much about Hanno Dirksen?
I have to confess, I've not followed him that closely, but what I can say is, anybody who plays over 150 times for a professional club side, and particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, and particularly as a front, in the forwards, you're gonna be worth your salt. So he goes over to Nola, and as you say, they have looked one of the form teams. I guess between them and DC, they're looking good as well. So yeah, no, I'm sure he'll be a very good addition to their side, bring a little bit of grunt.
We spoke last time about the Seattle Seawolves, who everybody thought was just going to walk away again. And I think we both predicted that this wasn't going to be the case this season. And I'm quite impressed that we've managed to. It's early days. I mean, don't get me wrong, but you know, a lot of the sides are stepping up and they're doing a fantastic job, and it's great to see. So I wish Hano, all the best, and let's see how he gets on next season. The second one here, we've got Jace. I mean, this is a big one. I mean, no pun intended. He's a big guy, but Jason Jenkins is joining Munster from Japan. Now, I'm going to hand over to you on this one, and could you please tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is as you say, like the big one. It's a bit more controversial as well. There's a bit of a backstory to this one. So effectively, it was announced. I actually tweeted it out earlier because I heard some whispers from certain sources that he was going over, and then a week later it was confirmed he was going to Munster. Now, originally, it was speculated that he was going to come back to the Bulls. So he played Bulls in all the warm-up series in South Africa, and he was sort of from the Bulls originally anyway. He went over to Japan, as you mentioned, and then the thinking was that he'd come back, join up with Jake White in the side, and go forward. And then sort of Munster swooped in and poached him in one sense. So the Bulls fans were quite upset because it sort of came a bit out of left field, and the reception in Munster has been quite mixed as well. They sort of thought, well, why are we signing this guy? Why aren't we backing our own players? Another South African coming over. But actually, if you sort of delve into it, and I was talking with a lot of Munster fans and guys who know the game really well on Twitter, and actually, if you analyze sort of what their squad is and where they are, it makes perfect sense. So for a start, they're losing CJ Stander at the end of this year. Now he plays the blind side position for them, so they're losing a big ball carrying option. And Jason Jenkins absolutely brings that. I mean, he's 6'6" or 6'7", and he's 124 kg. So he's hefty. You're definitely going to get go forward from him. But what he also offers is he offers that versatility. He can play second row, he can play blindside. So he's got that versatility element too. I mean, my thinking is the reason they've brought him in is that he's probably going to end up in the second row, and they're going to move Tad Byrne, who played fantastically for Ireland at blindside. They're going to move him to a more permanent back row position. But there's one more twist in the tail here as well, which is that Pieter-Steph du Toit, World Player of the Year 2019, Pieter-Steph du Toit, needs no introduction. Pieter-Steph du Toit, I've now rambled on about, but it was a done deal that he was to move to Munster. There's been lots of speculation that he's going to be leaving the Stormers. I think he probably is going to be leaving the Stormers. It was almost confirmed that he was going to go to Munster before the deal fell through because the wider Irish Rugby Union, the RFU, they blocked the move. Now, why exactly, we don't know. There's been lots of things suggested as to why they do it. We can't say for certainty. I think the most likely one is that they didn't like the optics of we're bringing in these foreign stars. But then also you kind of think, then why bring in Jenkins? But either way, that is the big one. We'll see how he goes. I think he's a fantastic player. I think we shouldn't forget the sort of human element to it, or the rugby element to it. He's a really, really talented player. He's, as you mentioned, he's got one cap for the Box already in 2018. That was when Rossi's first game, actually, against Wales. But he's been good for the Bulls. He was one of the standouts, I think, for them in the preparation series, or whatever you wanted to call it, earlier this year. No, Super Rugby Unlocked or whatever. So he was good for them. So I think he'll fit in very well in Munster. And Rossi Erasmus came out this week as well, and he said, look, it's fantastic he's going over. He's definitely clearly a player that Rossi still has an eye on, and he said it's great that he's going to be in a high performance environment, and he's already capped for South Africa, so he can still play for us.
Yeah, he's going to be looked after well, I'm sure. And I think it's just so coincidental that Pieter-Steph, there are talks of him now going to Toyota Verblitz, where Jason is playing and currently, and who's going to be leaving. So I don't know. It could be coincidence. There might be a deal that we are not sure about, but let's keep an eye on that one for sure. European rugby returned this week, and again, Stars impressed us. Our players that we spotted or sort of spotlighted the last time we spoke have impressed us yet again. They've stood up to the task, and they're just doing a phenomenal job. So I guess let's get stuck into it. So Damien de Allende again, Stars for Munster. I mean, they didn't win the game, but he played the full 80 minutes, ran in like 61 meters, 9 carries, 13 tackles, just among some of the stats. And he just had a brilliant game. He looked at his very best. And now, do you think that's down to the quality setup at Munster? Is he just enjoying life there? Does he have a lot to prove, or is he just taking care of business as usual?
Well, I mean, I think I'll touch on one thing first. You listed off some really good stats there. One thing which isn't as obvious in stats and doesn't come up when you just look at stats is there's one moment where he just did the most phenomenal counter ruck turnover. And he is, I think, the best center. I don't know probably the best back in the world at doing this. He's an unbelievable counter rucker, and he's brilliant at the breakdown. And, in today's rugby, where that skill is so wide, needs to be so versatile between backs and forwards. That's an unbelievable asset to have. And I don't think that's flagged up enough. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. But yeah, I completely agree with you. He's just been phenomenal. He, unfortunately, Munster didn't win the game, but I mean, Toulouse is a very, very strong side they're playing. And the previous week, in the European, in the Pro 14 final against Leinster, he had an equally impressive game. He's defensively strong. He's abrasive ball carrying option. His distribution is a lot better than people give him credit for. And I think we saw that, a few deft little passes to put people into space. He created a break. But yeah, I mean, he's just tearing it up. He was named in the Pro 14 team of the season. Unsurprisingly, he's been phenomenal for Munster. And yeah, I think it is a little bit that factor as well that you say, he might have a point to prove, because as we've discussed as well, Andre Esterhuizen is probably the form inside centre in just over the sea in the Premiership. So, those two very similar players are both in the form of their lives and absolutely tearing it up. And I have no doubt in my mind that they're pushing each other. Like, there's no way they're not, watching each other's performances. There's no way Rossi's not on the phone like, yes, chatting to Damien, being like, yes, but, Andre had a good game of the weekend, eh? And similarly, vice versa. So I think it's brilliant that we have that type of competition inside centre. It's such a crucial position for South Africa. A lot of South Africa's game plan relies on playing direct in that channel, forwards around the corner, So no, he's been phenomenal. Damien's been absolutely incredible. He's probably, I think, from my mind, the best inside centre in world rugby, and the first choice starter for South Africa. But yeah, so glad to see him doing well.
Yeah, he's a kick-ass player. I don't want to be Rossi Erasmus. Look, we mention it a lot. We talk a lot on Twitter, and you post a lot about it. It's only a good thing to have so many options at center, and we will get into some of the squads a bit later on in the episode. In terms of Lions, going over to South Africa. But yeah, Dylan Lates had another great game. Apart from the knock he took on the head, again, we will talk about officiating, but he's just, he's been incredible for La Rochelle at the moment. Him and, Raymond Rule, all of our guys in the backs are just stepping up and they're just having such a great time for these French clubs. And I'm trying to sort of dissect where, you know, what is going on so that these guys are just having the most incredible time for their teams. Like, where do you think the moment of magic is coming from, and what is setting them apart from all the other backs?
Well, I mean, it's a really tricky one to try and pin down. But I like to give you a shout out because I mean you had a chat with Dylan. I think it was like 2 weeks ago or whatever, and we talked about him last time we spoke. And we both said this guy's underrated. He's a really really good player, and I think people are waking up to that. I think that he might be a guy whose name needs to be in the Springbok conversation. We've got a lot of good fullbacks, but he gives you that versatility, fullback wing. He's a great distributor. So, because I think he played 10 for a while as well. So he's a very, very capable, skillful player, good boot. But yeah, just coming on to your point about what sparks it. I don't know. It's really tough. I think you can speak in La Rochelle's case specifically. I think having Ronan O'Gara there makes a big difference. So he went to, after he finished playing whatever, he coached for a bit with the Crusaders. Now, there's no better team to coach with or be involved in a setup than the Crusaders. I mean, they're phenomenal. And I think he came back, and when he took over at La Rochelle as coach there, he wanted to transplant some of the sort of coaching philosophies that they have in New Zealand. So he talks about keep ball alive rugby, trying to move away from just creating breakdowns and playing off that. So, he's empowered his side, La Rochelle at least, to play with that type of freedom and attacking spirit. And I think that suits a guy like Dylan Lades and it suits a guy like Raymond Rule. But I mean, it's credit to him as well that Raymond Rule is playing at outside center. Now, he's always played wing, and that's where he played for South Africa in the few caps he played. And it was always said, this guy can't tackle, he can't defend. And ultimately, that's the reason he was dropped, is because his defense was shoddy. He was always good on attack, but he couldn't defend. So now you've put him in this defensively most difficult position on the pitch, and he's getting selected there week in, week out, and he's succeeding. So you have to give credit to coaching and obviously to Raymond as well. You must have worked very, very hard. But something's working in France for our players. Something's working overseas for our players as well. I think that, you see guys who are good in South Africa, but also because they're young and probably inexperienced, just excelling. I will come on to talk about him, but I mean, Jasper Wiese is another one, He's just, I mean, his performances every week, barring obviously the madness where he got a red card. But I mean, these guys are insane. I mean, it's a good time for us to be talking about Saffas abroad, because every week there's just so much to talk about.
They're giving us so much content, like you're saying, content to create and so much to talk about. And I mean, I remember obviously watching Jasper's try, and I mean, I think even my TV got a headache just watching it. And the guy is just a beast, man. Like, I mean, look, it's quite obvious that our players are going abroad. They're being exposed to ridiculous amounts of talent from other countries, all the countries they're playing in, the coaching staff that they're having to work with week in, week out, the facilities they're training in. We have to be honest here, man. Like, it's just the setups are just a lot better. I'm not saying anything bad about South African teams and their setups, because they have such a rich history and they have produced some of the most incredible rugby players on the planet. But modern times, if you look at Raymond Rule, if you look at Dylan Lades, and if you look at some of the guys in France, they're on social media, they're interacting with their fans, they're loving life at these clubs. And I mean, there's obviously a factor that is helping them in their game. And I am, for one, absolutely loving what's happening, over in France, in America, in Japan, or wherever it may be, because it's great to see, man. It's great to see. Who else do you want to talk about this week then? Who have we done? We've done Damien, Dylan, Kotaro Matsushima again. I mean, how about that try?
He scored the winner, didn't he? Yeah, he scored the winner. What a finish. I mean, yeah, so good to see him doing well. I mean, if I were to flag up two guys, if I may, is the two hookers, because I read an article, I think about 2 weeks ago, saying outside of, obviously we know Bongi Benambi and we know Malcolm Marx are the starting two, and they're the first choice two hookers in South Africa. That makes sense. They're both brilliant. But below that, there's a third hooker spot in the squad usually, and who's that going to go to? Because obviously in the World Cup it went to Schalk Brits, but he's now retired. So I basically said I think two guys you need to look at are Aka van der Merwe and Joseph Dweba, who's at Bordeaux. So Dweba was great for the Cheetahs. He was sort of said to be a shoe-in for book selection. Then he made the move to Bordeaux. He struggled for game time a bit, but I think he's just as talented. And both those players this weekend, unbelievable. Aka van der Merwe scored 2 tries, man of the match performance for Sale. Joseph Dweba scored the winning try against Bristol. Bristol being the top team in the Premiership, no one's been able to touch them, and Bordeaux gave them a hiding. So it was nice. It was nice to see those two guys stand up. I mean, they're both physical, ball carrying hookers, which you love to see. So no, I think those two guys are worth mentioning as well. I think they're on a really good path, and it's going to again be a very good selection headache to have for Rossi and Jacques.
Aka is a beast, man. What he's doing for Sale and the sort of experience that he's bringing to the team. I mean, we have to talk about some of his lineouts. They have him in the, I mean, I support Sale and I see it week in, week out from some of the fans, and that seems to be one of the strains on his game at the moment is his lineout. Now, apart from his physicality and the great work that he is doing for Sale, where do you think he can improve on the lineouts? Because I think from what I can see and from the stats that I'm reading and from everything else, I think that's probably the one area he needs to improve most on, especially if you want to be a Springbok hooker.
Sure. I mean, so that's always been the thing, isn't it? I mean, it's not dissimilar to Malcolm Marx. Malcolm Marx has always said, he's got the complete game, but I mean, his lineout training is an issue. And I think that he knows that. I don't think he's the finished article in terms of how well he could be throwing at the lineouts. However, one thing I'll throw your way is that from last season to this season, his lineout percentage success has gone up 10%. So it's clearly an area that Sale and he have identified, and they've said, look, this is a work on. So I think that is probably still the one area of weakness in his game, but I don't think it should be overstated because he's not a million miles away from where the other sort of top international hookers are performing. And his add value around the park is there for anyone else to see. I think it helps as well having Lood de Jager at Sale, because obviously when as long as they've played together and been in Springbok setups together, and they'll know each other. So I mean, Lood orchestrates that line out so well that I think it makes his job as a hooker easier to find your man. Because obviously the hooker always bears the burden with, if it's a lost line out, it's the hooker's fault, but oftentimes it's the caller's fault or it's the person organizing its fault. So although it's a work on, I'll agree with you there. I think it's overstated how I don't think it's like a complete Achilles heel in this game, and it is somewhere that he is improving. I think he's an exceptional player.
Lood was missed quite a bit yesterday in that Sale game. I know in the end they sort of done Scarlett a new one pretty much. But, Lood de Jager, he was definitely missed in that lineout, and I think we mentioned it yesterday, or the news came out yesterday, or Alex Sanderson said why Lood de Jager wasn't even in the squad. We now know that he's broken his ankle. There was a meniscus tear. He's done something to his femur, and Alex Sanderson said it best. Lood trains like he plays. So this is a guy that's not had the best luck with injury. He's, it's not even a funny matter. Like, I mean, he's a big part of Sale. He's a big part of the Springbok setup. And do you think that he's going to be back in time?
I hope so. Hey, I can't. I mean, he's so integral to everything that South Africa does. I know, for example, when he had that, he's struggled with his shoulders more. So it's so unfair now. Obviously, he gets another knee injury now, and it's a freak accident of training. And I don't know how long he's going to be out for, but it's about 3 months is what they're speculating. But it might be the Lions series gone. It would be heartbreaking, honestly. I mean, he is. I honestly think he's our best second row, with respect to Etzebeth and Erkis Snyman and Franco Mostert. I honestly think that Lood de Jager is probably the best second row we have in South Africa, and people don't talk about that enough. He would be an enormous loss, put it that way. What he adds off the pitch as well. Apparently, he's like an incredible good analyst when it comes to, forward defensive structures and line-out play and scrum play. So, he's got that, IQ as well, that rugby IQ. all I can say is I feel heartbroken for the guy, and I really, really hope that he comes back in time. And one positive I think is that you get some guys who need to play themselves back into form. We saw when Lut came back, I think a few weeks ago, about a month ago, he was on a blistering top form straight off the bench after injury, and then the next game he was man of the match, and the next game after that he should have been man of the match. So I think that even if he's ready just before the Lions, I think Rossi needs to pick him, needs to take a chance on him, because I just know the guy will deliver. But yeah, my heart goes out to him, and I really, really hope he has a speedy recovery.
Yeah, Lewitt, we hope you recover well and very, very fast, my man. Pollard's another one. He hasn't played a single game all season for Montpellier. And I mean, do we think Montpellier, or was this a direct instruction from Rossi to maybe just rest him and say, do you know what, Montpellier aren't really going places this season, but is he maybe just being benched to come back for the Springbok side?
I don't know. I think it would be surprising if the French clubs won't be dictated to by their own union. So I don't think they'd be dictated to by Rossi. I reckon if Pollard was fit to play, I'm 100% sure they would be playing him. I think it's just the fact that he's had that horrible knee injury, his ACL, I think it was, and he's just been out for ages and ages and ages. The problem is, with that type of injury, it's difficult to come back straight into form. I think the feeling is that he will be ready in time for the Lions, which is really, really good news. But again, he's one of those players that maybe, I'm sure he'll be fine and on top form as soon as he comes back. But again, it's a concern. You've got a lot of guys who still need to play themselves back into form. I mean, Siya Kolisi's form has been dreadful, and that's our captain, but he's been injured a long time. So he's showed really good signs in the last game that he played against the Bulls for the Sharks in his debut. But he only managed 50 minutes, and he's sort of been on and off. So it's we have some really strong and important integral players who are coming back from injury, and we hope that process goes quickly over the next few months.
Yeah, man, it's a tough one, and good luck to Andre as well. Hope you recover well. Just before we do get into some of the officiating and the Lions tour and all that, I just wanted to sort of touch base, sort of step away from one other sort of bit of news this week that you might be able to shed some light on. Well, I know you have, because you've been tweeting about it, is there's the whole situation at Harlequins and Mike Brown. To me, from what I've read and from what I've seen, it just looks like the guy got absolutely mugged off.
Yeah. That's a pretty good summary, I think. So to give context, Mike Brown, he's been at Harlequins basically his entire career, 18 years. From junior structures is the one place he's been. It's one place he's wanted to play. He's lived and died for Quins, and he's been phenomenal for them for a very, very long period of time. So effectively, as the season came in, before the season started, his form wasn't so good. He wasn't really in the England setup anymore, and he's 36 years old, so he's not in the long-term plans going forward. He's very much old guard. And Paul Gassard, who was the head coach or director of rugby, I think he was director of rugby at the time at Harlequins at the start of the season, he basically made a decision that Mike Brown was no longer going to be part of Quins' setup going forward, and said to him, look, at the end of the season, your contract's up. And that's fine. Coaches have a prerogative to do that. Sport is tough and it's unforgiving, and you need to make those calls sometimes. The controversy comes in the way that it was done. So the first element of it was that it wasn't initiated by the coaches. It wasn't an open conversation with Mike Brown. It was Mike Brown having to basically pester them, being like, what's going on? My contract's up for renewal, and just getting no feedback. So there was a breakdown in communication already, which is just not a good way of handling your players and managing your players, your talent, or people in general, in any line of work. And then eventually, when the call was made, it was, and Mike Brown came and he did an interview about this, and he said effectively it was about a 4-minute conversation. Called me into the office and said, yeah, you're done here. I mean, for a guy who's given his entire life, his entire career to one club, and desperately wanted to finish his career at that club, not only is it brutal telling him, okay, we don't have a place for you, it's then even worse, or far worse actually, to the way they did it, where effectively it was just like an assassination. 4 minutes. It's just shameful. You don't treat people like that. It's just, there's no respect. It's not a way. It's just not a way you treat people in any line of work. And I mean, the chickens have come home to roost slightly, because Gustard would, he didn't last very long afterwards at Quins, and he got sacked effectively, and for poor performances, and the side has looked a lot happier and a lot better as a place since he's left. But unfortunately, Mike Brown has been the collateral damage on that front. And what makes it even more sad is the fact that Mike Brown's form this season has been astronomical. He's been incredible for Quins at 15. People are saying he's an outside bet to go to the Lions. He's been that good. People are saying he should definitely be looked at in the England setup again. I mean, so it's really, really bad, and it just shows how awful it is when communications break down, and when you're just not treating players with respect and integrity as a management staff. I mean, all the most successful clubs in the world are successful because they cultivate an environment and a culture where players feel respected and supported, and feel that they are able to give their all for a jersey. What player wants to come to Quins if that's the setup that's going on? What player wants to perform at Quins when that's the type of shit that your management pulls on you? So better that Gustard's gone. Quins look a happier place. I feel for Mike Brown. He's off to Newcastle. I'm sure he'll do very well there. But it's just unfortunate, really.
Yeah, it sucks to be Harlequins, and hey, Newcastle are getting an absolute player and a half, aren't they? I mean, look what Newcastle are currently doing and what they're building on at the moment. I think he's going to fit into that setup absolutely perfect. And good luck to Mike Brown. I think he's a phenomenal player, one of my favorite England players. He's not always been the most likable player, but then again, most players are liked and they're hated, and it's everybody's own opinion. But I do think it's a big loss for Quins. I mean, obviously, we're going to be a bit biased and say, look, Tyrone Green could be stepping into that 15 jersey. He did a really good job yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't win the game against Ulster,
yeah,
but he did a great job. Brett Heron's another guy who might be an option. I don't know if he's going to be a permanent 15 for Quins, given the fact that Tyrone Green is a massive option for them now. And we touched base on this earlier about the versatility of our backs and our players. And I think that's probably what makes South African rugby so good and so special, is the fact that we've got players from 1 to 15 who can pretty much, bar the hookers, I guess, who can...
Well, you say that, but Kyle Cooper, who is always a hooker at the Sharks, he's not playing loosehead for Newcastle. So even the front row, we've got players who are playing hooker who've moved in the front row. So our players are exceptionally versatile.
And that could be, down to a whole cluster of things. But I mean, it's great to see. So let's move on to officiating. And again, this weekend, I'm going to throw a couple out there. Add some more if you like. I mean, we spoke a little bit quickly about it in La Rochelle's game where Dylan was hit, but fair enough. It was a very good decision. It sucks, obviously, that there was nothing else added to the infringement, but Dylan sort of does duck down into the tackle, was hit. Contact was made with the head, of course. But he was absolutely fine. In the laws of the game, it's very controversial, that call, but I think they made a pretty good call there. I mean, he didn't even want to go off. He was fine. He just sort of looked at the coaching staff and said, why am I going off? But anyway, those are the rules. Yeah. You have to have an HIA.
If I jump in on that one quickly.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I think that one is a good example of the coaches and the management, not coaches, sorry, the refereeing team working through the procedures and getting the call right. Okay. So exactly as you say, head contact was made direct with force under normal circumstances. That's a red card. But they explained it really well. They walked it through. Yes, he was definitely dropping. He was dropping quite a lot, actually. And the guy tackled very low. So there's absolutely mitigating factors there. So yes, they reached the right, they applied the framework correctly, and they reached the right conclusion. And if there was consistency, that would help. It's just that there's such a variety of inconsistency, and you get cards where people are dipping, but then it's a red card. And for example, we'll go back to the Bunde Arki one in the Six Nations where Billy Vunipola was definitely dipping. So that one is, not enough mitigation, or there's enough mitigation there. And so there's that subjectivity which creates inconsistency. And that's in that gray areas where a lot of complaints and issues are had by fans. In terms of the HIA, I'm glad that they did take him off and just make sure that he's okay. I mean, no player wants to go off. We all know that, anybody who's played the game, you want to stay on the pitch, but it is probably better and it is safer for everyone involved if they do get those HIAs. So that's a good thing, I think. So, but yeah, I think in that case, to come back to it, I think they actually got that one exactly right. They worked through the framework, they applied it correctly and made what I thought was the correct decision.
One that they didn't even bother looking at, or for some reason weren't even fussed about, was Jake Ball with his direct contact to Faf de Klerk's head. I mean, the poor guy just sort of bent, like a nail clipper. I mean, his leg went one way. God forbid his hair. I mean, poor Faf. That's probably what saved him, to be honest. But what was Jake Ball thinking? And I mean, how the fuck did he get away with that?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is the type of stuff that you're like, how in God's name is this allowed? How is that not? I mean, okay, so let's walk through the incident, try and rationalize this. So it's a ruck's over, dead, done. You've got Jake Ball who's in the sort of guard position. Faf's about to box kicks. He wants to put pressure on the kick. Fine, that happens all the time. So he's in that position, ruck's over. Then he decides, oh no, the ball's out. I'm going to go and tackle Faf de Klerk. No. Okay. The ball wasn't out but we'll come on to it. The ball wasn't out. The ball was very much still in the ruck. Faf has his hands on it. Having the hands on the ball doesn't make it out. You have to pick it up as the scrum off. Then the ball's out. But either way, so Jake Ball comes and he decides, right, I'm not going to enter the ruck from the side. I'm not going to enter from the back foot. I'm going to go straight and tackle the 9 because the ball's out. But in tackling him, he then dives with his shoulder straight into the guy's head and he folds him like an origami swan. Jake Ball's a big guy and Faf de Klerk, as we know, is not a big guy. Big heart, not a big oak. So yeah, he basically completely blindsides this guy. He stood still. He's not braced or anything in contact. He's not even in contact. He's just got his hands on the ball. And this oak thunders down, dives straight into him, shoulder to his head. It's one of the worst things I've seen, genuinely, in a few weeks. It's the most clear-cut red card I've seen possibly in the last 3 months. All this debating, there's probably a definite red card, 1,000,000%. And then the officials look at it and they go, no, the ball was out. Okay, well, for a start, the ball wasn't out. But, that point is debatable. But even if the ball is out, how can you let someone get away with that type of thing? You can see Faf afterwards, obviously, he's quite pissed off with this. And you can see Jean-Luc Dupré as well, everyone asking the linesman. But the French officials, I mean, the TMO watches this thing back, that any guy who's watched rugby for a day can tell you that's a red card any day of the week and twice on a Sunday. It was ludicrous. It's shameful. And I know I scuppered myself a little bit last time. I said with Ellis Genge and his elbows, I'd be amazed if it wasn't cited. In this one, I'd be even more amazed if this wasn't cited. And he wasn't banned for 6 weeks, 4 weeks. I don't know. I mean, it was a complete cheap shot. It was it was awful. It's not a tackle. I don't want to call it a tackle. It wasn't a tackle. No. So no, but I'm glad Faf wasn't hurt. As you say, his hair saved him. As you can see, I'm growing my hair out as well, so maybe I can also be a bit more resistant. But no, I mean, I'm glad he was okay. I mean, he could have injured his head. His ACL could snap if you're folding someone like that. Poor rugby. Awful thing to see. I hope Jake Ball gets a big old suspension. It's not the first time. It was clearly the act of a guy who was very upset because Faf was, obviously kicked him out the World Cup before and laughed in his face, and now Sale were pumping his Scarlet side. So not looking good for him, eh?
No, it's not. And I hope the correct decision is made and he does learn from this, because I mean it was ridiculous. Faf sets himself up nicely. He's got that beautiful fishhook leg set to go, hands on the ball, and he's just stood there. There was no movement. I mean, there was no indication that the ball was out. The ball was not out. I mean,
no, it wasn't out. Let's be clear. That ball wasn't out. It wasn't out because he hadn't picked it up. It wasn't out because it was also still in the ruck between Jean-Luc's feet or whoever it was who was sealing. That ball wasn't out. How the referee could call that ball out, but French referees do what French referees want to do, and French officials are a law unto themselves sometimes. So, look, it is what it is. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I hope he gets a proper sanction for it, because it was one of the worst things I've seen on a rugby pitch for a while.
Yeah, very bizarre. I mean, so let's quickly, Ryan. I mean, that being said, that sets up the quarterfinals nicely, which start on Saturday, the 10th of April. The Heineken Cup quarterfinals. La Rochelle take on Sale. I mean, that's look, people are not giving Sale a chance at all here, and I think they might be highly surprised when, La Rochelle is not an easy place to go and win. We've got our favorite Saffas playing there too, so that should be a great matchup. That's going to be on Saturday the 10th, La Rochelle against Sale Sharks. One of the biggest games that I'm looking forward to with not very many South Africans is actually Exeter Chiefs taking on Leinster. They are in the second game of that Saturday. Bordeaux take on Racing. That'll be a good game, an all French affair. And then another French sort of battle with Clermont taking on Toulouse. So it's safe to say there's going to be a French finalist. I mean, the probability of there not being one, it's impossible. But Sale have a really good chance.
Sale could do it, hey? Or Leinster as well. Leinster have looked very good. So, but yeah, I mean,
Exeter are current champions.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry, I think Exeter have taken a slight step back this year. I don't think they're as dominant as they were last year, but I think they'll still be an absolute handful. And who's to say? I think the interesting one about the La Rochelle Sale game is we were talking earlier about Ronan O'Gara and this, keep ball alive style play. It's very, very Kiwi. But as we all know, the way to beat the Kiwi sides is effectively you need to get grit in those gears. I described it once as like Kiwi sides, and La Rochelle, I'm calling a Kiwi side for the purposes of this because they play that same mentality. Their philosophy is like a fine-tuned watch. Everything is beautifully in sync. All the parts work together. Everything gels, and you have this visually very attractive style of rugby, quick rugby, move the ball around, tire people out, and win that way. And that's fine, and that's great if you can do it. But obviously on the counter side, the way to beat that is to basically get grit in the gears of that fine-tuned watch. You've got to make the breakdowns hell. You've got to make every collision hell for them, and you need to attack their set piece. You basically need to play the type of rugby South Africa plays, where you constrict them. You don't allow them space. You don't allow them time to execute that strategy, because otherwise they'll rip you apart. So it's going to be the battle of the styles, because Sale, with the forward pack that they have, and just the team they have, I mean, they are geared exactly to beating that style of play, which is why we saw them beat Bristol earlier in the season, because Bristol play that same type of attacking, free-flowing rugby. But when you come up against a forward pack that gives you zero purchase, that takes you on every collision, I mean, Sale love to tackle. I'm sure they'll bring back Jono Ross for that. With Curry there, both Dupree boys, those guys, they're not scared of tackling. They're not scared of hard yards. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be really interesting to see which style comes out on top. With home advantage, I'd say probably La Rochelle, but it'd be good. Sale have a real chance. I don't think people should write them off.
No, and I'd love to see that there's a potential opportunity that Rowan Janssen van Rensburg could be going up against Raymond Rule. So
that would be fun. Really,
that could be pretty good. Right, let's finish off the episode with. I think you've got something or an update, or you wanted to chat about the Rainbow Cup. I hope to God they don't call it that.
Is that that one's set. Unfortunately, the Rainbow Cup, as stupid a name as it is now. It's set in stone. But I think, as stupid a name as it is, it's not as stupid as the full name, which is I think it's the Guinness Pro 14, even though they're not 14 teams in it, Rainbow Cup. So it's like one long protracted thing. It's nonsense. But I do know that they're looking to change the name of the pro rugby competition because the numbers aren't working. There's too many sides going in and out. And so I think they're looking to change that for next season as well, hopefully. But yeah, just a quick one on the Rainbow Cup. Obviously, South Africa's teams coming up to Europe, the big four teams coming up to Europe for the first time. They're going to be based, I think last I heard, they're going to be based in Bristol. So they're going to be based up here. They're not going to have any home games against European opposition. But I think it's going to be a real cracker. I really do. I think they'll have a point to prove. I think on the evidence of some of the teams that are playing this weekend, I think they might do quite well. I think those Welsh sides are in for a hiding. I always find it entertaining. Sorry to be a bit controversial now. When we talk about South Africa joining Europe and joining the Pro 16 or Pro 14 or whatever, it's always the Irish fans and Irish, pundits who are like, yeah, come on, bring it on, it'd be great, it's always the Welsh fans who just moan. They moan and they moan and they moan about it. And, oh, we don't want this. We want to play England. It's like, Oaks, you all four your sides lost this weekend. And, it was capped off by Scarlets getting smashed by, they put 57 points past Scarlet's Sale. It's like, guys, the English sides don't want to play you because, let's be honest, you guys aren't good enough at the moment. So all you'd be doing if you leave the Pro 14 and by some miracle England took you in is you'd stop losing to the Irish sides and start losing to the English ones. I mean, it's just the most irritating thing. I mean, they don't stop going on about, oh, we don't want South Africa in a competition. Oh, we want a competition with the English sides. Like, England don't want that. The Premiership's a brilliant competition. They have no reason to saturate their schedule anymore for your benefit. So can they just be quiet and get on with it? I mean, just focus on improving your own rugby for a second there, hey? Yes, it's.
I mean, the Welsh are just passionate about the game, aren't they? I mean, the fans. I mean, have you been to a game in Wales?
I have. I've been. They're unbelievable. And let me also sort of qualify this with saying Welsh are some of the best, most passionate, most brilliant rugby fans ever. But honestly, guys, this is just stop moaning about not playing against English sides more often. Stop moaning about how bad the Pro 16 is. You're there, so make the best of it. It's just so tiresome, wearying, seeing it every single time. But no, I'm being maybe a bit too harsh on them. A lot of them are. A lot of them are looking forward to it as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, we will obviously break down the Pro 16 or the Rainbow Cup Pro 16 or the 16 Rainbows or whatever they want to call it. But we will get into that, obviously, because it does start very soon. But let's finish off with the tournament that everybody is so excited about. And again, we will get into that a lot closer to the time. But that's the Lions Tour. Again, I have not seen anything other than what we know already, other than, May 6th, which is now a month away tomorrow. They're going to be announcing the Lions squad. Do you think they're going to be announcing the Springbok squad the same day? Probably, maybe there or thereabout.
No, I think the Springbok squad will be announced probably at the conclusion of the Rainbow Cup, or sort of around that time. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Springbok squad was a fair bit later than that. Because remember as well that the Lions need to be announced because they have all those warm-up games before before the Lions series actually starts. Where South Africa at the moment, they've got some talks of warm-up games being scheduled against the USA, but nothing confirmed at the moment. So I think the Springbok squad will possibly be announced a bit later. But on that Lions squad announcement, what we also know about is that Warren Gatland's looking to bring 36 players. Now, a squad of 36 for 3 tests and warm-up games is not a big one. I think he brought 38 to New Zealand, or maybe 36 to New Zealand, but it's certainly far fewer players than we've seen in the past. Now, I don't know what the logic is behind that, or what the thinking is behind that on his part. I mean, he's a very savvy operator, and he obviously knows a lot more than I do, so I won't tell him he's wrong. But what I will say is that it seems an interesting one to bring a smaller squad size going into what will be the most physical series in the history of rugby. And I have no doubt of that, playing at home now as well for South Africa. So we'll see. Those 36 Oaks better be up for the fight, because I tell you, if they're playing the warm-up games as well, the Bulls, I think they're playing the Bulls, Sharks, Stormers, and Lions. And those guys will come at them. They're gonna go hammer and tongs. So I can just imagine Jake White the week before the first test, picking a team of all the Bulls players who aren't already in the Springbok squad, and just the most physical team you can put out there, and just going at them. Because we forget Jake White did the same thing with the Brumbies in 2013, and he beat the Lions. So yeah. Anyway, it should be an absolute cracker, but I'm sure we'll break it down further in the future.
And Gatland's going to have a bit of a back row headache as well, isn't he? I mean, tell us a bit more about that, please.
So we talked last time about how the back row of the Lions may shape up. I think Talupe Faletau is pretty much your dead certain number 8 at this point. If it weren't for Billy Vunipola's form, you would include him in the conversation. But I think Talupe Faletau is now sort of the starter at 8. At open side, it was sort of seen as a bit of a toss-up between Hamish Watson and Tom Curry. But I think over the last few rounds of the Six Nations, and this weekend as well, even though Edinburgh didn't win and didn't play very well, Hamish Watson has just been so fantastic. I mean, won Six Nations Player of the Tournament as well, and very richly deserved So I think he has the inside line there at open side. So I think that they'll go seven, which is obviously seven, which is obviously open side, Northern Hemisphere, which is confusing. But so seven, they'll have they'll have Hamish Watson. Eight, they'll have Talupe Falatau. And then for my mind, I think they'll go for Tad Burn at six. They'll go for really big ball carrying lock / flanker in the blindside position. That would be for my thinking, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, CJ Stander's in the mix because he covers 8 and blindside as well. Your Curry will be in the mix for open side still. So yeah, they've got a lot of options.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one because I mean, but to be fair, to be honest, again, this is just our opinion, but whoever they put there, it shouldn't be too much of a problem because again, look at some of the guys who don't even have Springbok jerseys yet who are making such a statement. So it's definitely going to be one of the most anticipated Lions tours, considering everything that has happened with COVID and the new way that it's going to be sort of hosted in. But I'm sure, we mentioned this last time that however it goes, it's probably going to be one of the best ones. And it's a big, bold statement to make, but I'm hoping that players who deserve to wear the jersey for their country, or in this case, the Lions or a Springbok jersey, but I'm excited. I don't look excited. I don't seem excited, but I am because, but we will get into that when the time comes. I think we can sort of touch base around the time of the announcements. But yeah, I mean, safe to say it's been a really good week again. It's been an incredible weekend. Our guys keep performing week in, week out. It's great for us. It's great for Russie because it gives him a lot more options. But yeah, man, it's been a good weekend of rugby. Japan was very quiet again. I think just the one try, but yeah, what a good weekend of rugby, and it's good to have you back on the show, man.
Yeah, no, brilliant to jump on again. I agree with you. It's been a fantastic week, and particularly, I mean, European rugby is European weekend. It's always a lot of fun. Our boys stood up really well. So many of them putting up their hands just for higher honours, and long way to make continue. As you say, I think whoever we put in that front 8 to front the Lions is going to do a job on them. I genuinely believe that. There's no demons in that front 5 for me either. I think our boys are going to take them. And I'm opening myself up here a little bit, but I think our guys. There's no pack on the planet that can compete. No country in the world produces as many consistently impressive forward players as we do. No country even comes close. So yeah, we have strength and depth there. We'll be fine. I reckon we're going to have them.
Awesome. Oh, well, I mean, European rugby isn't finished. It's back next weekend, so we can touch base on that again. I'm hoping there's some more controversial stories that happen because obviously it gives us something to talk about. I hope there's loads more tries. I hope that it's just an incredible, we're getting closer and closer to lockdown being lifted here in the UK. And, one of these days we'll be at a match, sort of experiencing all of this in person. So yeah, another great week, another great episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Brilliant. Cheers, eh?
All right, cheers.